Hey everyone, I'm back with another video. Kaguya-sama Season 3 Episode 5 ED. It looks fucking incredible. Let's talk about it. So when you look at something that is of this high level of quality all around, whether it's the storyboards, the animation, the compositing, you expect it to be done by a massive studio with rotoscoping artists because some of these scenes looks like it's rotoscoped. That's not what's actually happening here. What's actually happening here is that the studio outsourced this to an 18-year-old kid who worked on this in his room. Of course, this 18-year-old happens to be one of the most talented new artists in anime. This video is about Vercreek, a prodigy animator from Philippines, who gained recognition as an action animator from his work in Jujutsu Kaisen, and he's also the one who animated what was pretty much the only extended animation sequence in Attack on Titan, the final season part 1. And now he's back with what is one of the most impressive EDs I've probably seen ever in anime. So when you look at Vercreek's animation style, it's very clear that he looks up to Norio Matsumoto. They both have a very loose type of animation, super fluid, super smeary. So now Norio Matsumoto's style is just the fluidity taken to the extreme. He is absolutely the fluidity over form type of animator. His style of animation is the most prone to being screenshotted by complete idiots as an example of bad animation, when it's really the exact opposite. The still frames look awkward because the fluidity in his animation is so exaggerated. It really makes his scenes only more impressive because you have to understand that when he's drawing those awkward drawings, he has to draw them, but he knows what the final product will look like. And that takes a crazy amount of imaginative power and just a crazy amount of experience. But what separates Vercreek from Norio Matsumoto's animation style is the level of detail that he puts into the characters. Matsumoto does not put a lot of detail into the characters themselves. As I said before, he's just the biggest advocate of fluidity over form, except for maybe like Masaki Yuasa, both of whom are working together in Inuo. I mean, Inuo is already out. I haven't watched it yet. Pretty excited for this. It's Masaki Yuasa's direction plus Norio Matsumoto being the main animator. It's probably going to look really incredible. But coming back to the topic, Norio Matsumoto does not have a lot of detail, whether it's clothing, whether it's just line work. He just skips all of that, just makes his animation look as fluid as possible. On the other hand, Vercreek has a huge emphasis on detailed shadows with every crevice of the character, whether it's anatomical or whether it's just the clothing. We first see this in Jujutsu Kaisen episode 13. When I saw that, I just thought that was just heavy animation direction, heavy corrections, that is. Hironori Tanaka, who was the animation director of that episode. And that scene looked very much like Hironori Tanaka's animation style, where there's a heavy emphasis on deep shadows and a lot of detailed character faces. But then Vercreek did the same thing in episode 17, where Hironori Tanaka did not work at all. And that's when I realized this is just Vercreek's style. In the scene with Maki, you can really see just how detailed her clothing is. And even when she's just zooming forward, which again, it's stretched to the limits, sort of like Norio Matsumoto's animation style. But even in that fluid Norio Matsumoto style animation, he still applies a lot of detail. And that's just super impressive to me. Just the fact that he's able to add a lot of detail while also keeping the scenes super fluid. It's really incredible. Next, let's get to the ending itself. So, if you look at what exactly Vercreek did for this ED, you'll see that he did pretty much everything. He did the character design, he did the storyboard, he did most of the key animation. I don't think this has ever happened before. Openings and endings are a pretty big deal. If you have a really popular opening, chances are you'll have a very popular show. I haven't even watched Death Parade, but I'm sure I will watch it. Only because of the opening. The opening is so fucking good that I will watch Death Parade. They are so important that they prioritize it and put most of their resources there. And since putting most of your resources into the 1 minute 30-second clip is not feasible for most productions, the better idea is just to outsource it. So with Osama Ranking and even Jujutsu Kaisen, we saw outsourcing of the opening. It was done to Shingo Yamashita. Shingo Yamashita, an incredible animator, incredible storyboarder, pretty much did everything for those openings, except for the animation. The animation, he just has so many connections with freelancers. I will definitely make a whole video on Shingo Yamashita's openings, but outsourcing it entirely to one person is a different thing. You'll see examples of that with Slime Isekai, where the entire opening and ED was outsourced to Ebata. He did everything for the openings and EDs. He did the storyboards, he did the entire animation for both the opening and ED of Slime Isekai. Similarly, Norimito Suzuki, someone who's built up a name for himself for being a solo key animator for EDs. But this has never happened before. Something of this high level of importance is usually done by veterans in the industry. Vercreek is 18 years old. Someone so young was given the opportunity to do everything, do whatever the fuck he wants with an ending sequence of such a popular show. With this, he just shows that it's not just the animation that he's good at. He's also an incredible director, and I wouldn't even be surprised if he just gets his own show in the near future as assistant director. Maybe you start off as like character designer and animation director, but I see him getting his own show. I'm sure he's going to work in Chainsaw Man. He's done a lot of fan animations for Chainsaw Man. If you want to check it out, you can follow him on Twitter. I put his Twitter link in the description. But Vercreek has a lot of Twitter animations, and they all look incredible. Anyway, getting to the breakdown. It starts with a pretty goofy scene. There's a fan in the background here, as you can see, and there's someone standing in front of the fan. That's just a goofy-ass character in the background, standing in front of the fan. Nonetheless, really well animated. Every one of these people are really well animated. They're all individually moving, and they all have different poses, and the way they're moving is also different. This is already incredible. The shadows of the fence perfectly reflecting of Miyuki's face. This is something I talked about in my God Slap video too, with the goggles animation in God Slap. People don't really think about this when they think about animation, but shadows are like pretty important in animation. Like the way the fence is casting the shadows on Miyuki's face here, even though the fence is not animated by Vercreek himself, he has to animate the shadows bouncing off of, or not really bouncing, the shadows being cast on Miyuki's face, I should say. Like as he moves past the fence is no longer casting a shadow on his face, but is casting a shadow on his back. And here you'll notice the unique character designs that he's using. This is of course completely different from the show's character designs. They all have, I think the difference is mostly really prominent jaws, maybe. He's not using a ton of line work. He just plays more with deep shadows than just heavy amount of line work. But yeah, the characters all have really prominent jaws. Even the women, they have pretty prominent jaws, albeit not as much as the guys do, but they still have a pretty prominent jaw. So with Miyuki here, the main idea of movement comes obviously from the dancing, but then there's an extra amount of motion that he's adding using this smoke that is just coming off of Miyuki. I don't know why it's coming off of Miyuki. Maybe it's just his coat that is heating him up. And so there's this gorgeous effects animation with the smoke that is coming off of Miyuki. But his hair, there's minimal movement with his hair, right? Yeah, his hair is barely moving. It does move when he's making abrupt movements. But now let's look at Ishigami. Ishigami does not have steam coming off of him. So for that extra little bit of movement, his hair is super fluid. Just from this initial scene, there's so much movement with Ishigami's hair that Miyuki's hair just does not have. And that creates like this juxtaposition, you could say, between these two characters who are animated in similar ways, but what is animated about them is completely different. Like with Miyuki, there's more emphasis on his form, like he's dancing in a really strong way, whereas you in the background is just drawn in extremely fluidly. He's just moving so much, including his hair. And again, the super heavy shadows. It's like something that you would see in Western shows maybe, but it really is incredible. And the compositing it's just so good. The compositing here is just fantastic. Like the warm colors give me like the feeling of Shingo Yamashita's compositing. It's just gorgeous. Even though the composite is so heavy, it really doesn't deter from my enjoyment of this, like some Demon Slayer scenes do. In Demon Slayer, some of the times the compositing is just so over the top that I'm just like, you know what? Sometimes less is more. But here, none of that. The compositing is just perfectly complementing the animation. I wonder who did the compositing. I don't think it's Vercreek who did the compositing as well. I'm assuming it's just outsourced to a different studio. But it's incredible nevertheless. And also this small little segment with the rapid punches, really fucking cool. Next we get to Chika. Again, this variation in the animation with these two, right? Miko's hair is not moving much because she has a hoodie on, whereas Chika's hair is moving a lot. And Miko's clothing is not moving much either. There's a lot of detail in both of their clothings there's a lot of detail in all of their clothings, but her clothing is not moving as much as Chika's clothes. You can see that here very clearly. Chika's clothes is moving a lot because of what her clothing is like. She's wearing like a loose crop top. And the reason her cloth is just swaying so much is because she has tits. and Miko doesn't. That is taken into account here. Like when Chika does this, right? There's an emphasis on the boing. Look at the shadows, right? It's cast on her cleavage and it's perfectly dividing her two titties. And there goes the bounce, and then they come again, and then they settle down. So her boobs have like inertia, which it's supposed to have. And in motion, it just looks great. And that kind of motion, you will never see that with Ino. I'm sorry, Ino, but it's true. And the motion here again, so natural. Here, there's no rotoscoping, right? No one is really doing this. Vercreek has no reference. I wonder how he did this, actually. I have no idea. He's not using 3D models. There's the making of this video that he put on Twitter. I'll show it to you. He did the layout himself. He did the animation himself. He came up with this whole segment himself, and it's so well choreographed. I don't know if he's using reference for this from somewhere, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's not using any reference. He's just coming up with this stuff. He's choreographing it himself and then animating on top of it because he really is that talented. Yeah, that's just so good. Her clothes are moving so much, and the hoodie, the straps of the hoodie also moving a lot, trying to catch up with her movement. Just extremely natural looking motions. It's done so well, really so well. The wrinkles of her clothing really good, and the heavy shadows. Again, the Vercreek classic, fantastic. And here again, the heavy shadows, but this animation style, it looks like Keiichiro Watanabe style smoke animation. And well, if it is Keiichiro Watanabe style, it is kind of like Norio Matsumoto style, because Keiichiro Watanabe also looks up to Norio Matsumoto a lot. And look at the shadows on his face. Extremely deep shadows. Yeah, it just looks sort of like a mix of Keiichiro Watanabe and Yutapon to some extent with the jagged lines. Yeah, the jagged lines look really cool. I can't put my finger on what this really looks like. Yeah, I really can't think of one particular scene that this reminds me of. It kind of reminds me of Yuki Hayashi's scene in My Hero Academia's second movie, but not really. Yeah, I really don't know what this looks like. It looks very familiar, but then again, it's just so cool. You really won't see something like this in like a dance-off, right? Of course, the heavy amounts of smoke coming from his back. Yeah, the clothing, this kind of clothing, right? It's not even attached to the rest of his body. This is very Keiichiro Watanabe inspired effects. And it looks super cool. And it's the amount of hair flow that we're getting. And on the other side, we have Ishigami who's just bouncing around. The juxtaposition between the two characters on screen. It's super cool. And again, like the motions, they're so good. And Ishigami with, I don't know what that face is. But then again, he does this awesome flip here. I don't think that's just a flip. He's breakdancing. And it's super cool. The straps in his, attached to his jeans, again, super cool. The way they move. And now that the smoke animation is gone from Shirogane, his hair also starts moving a lot, as you can see in this cut, just done in an excessively fluid way. I mean, just look at that hair animation, right? Man, they all animate inertia so well. And by they, I mean just Sakuga, Japanese Sakuga animators in general. They're just so good at that. The sense of weight and stuff. Some really cool smears here. I think those are her hands. Are those multiples of her hands? Those are multiples of her hands. They're so far back. Here again, the way Miko's moving, just maybe it's because Miko is so light that she's able to move so easily. And on the other hand, we have Chika, whose movements are a little bit more stiff compared to Miko, right? You can see here, like she takes some time to settle. Once she's on the ground, she hits that Superman pose. And she settles for a while before she makes her movement again. And after she makes that movement, she does this and stops again before she does the next movement. So Chika is heavier than Ino. So Ino is just doing these fluid movements, jumping around like a maniac. Whereas Chika has a little bit more weight in her movements. Again, like really good compositing work. If I had to nitpick anything about this whole segment, this would be the only scene I would say is not perfect. And that's because these characters in the audience, they're way too small. Like these characters are smaller than Ino, which makes no sense because Ino is so small. But that's about it. That's the only thing I can criticize about this whole ending because it's so fucking good. And it's not even a real criticism. I don't think anyone would notice that. And this little shake that Ino is doing, it's just so cute. Again, our main focus is on the fact that Kaguya is being pulled up by Shirogane here. But there's more stuff to this. We have Ishigami in the corner here making that face again, the goofy ass face. I don't know why he's doing that, but it's funny. And then we do the spinny thing with Ishigami. As good as this ending is, the thing that makes it even better is that Vercreek, the way he's storyboarding is, he's not forgetting to tell a story. This feels like it's in the Kaguya-sama universe. It's not just that these are Kaguya-sama's characters thrown into a dance-off. It really feels like this is happening in the Kaguya-sama universe. First of all, with Ishigami being pushed forward by Kaguya here, because Ishigami is not the most confident person, and Kaguya has always pushed him, especially working on his confidence and stuff. And here you see that. And when Shirogane takes his hoodie off, he looks up, he sees Hayasaka, and him looking at Hayasaka with this expression, it's brought into attention of the viewer that Shirogane is looking at Hayasaka here. Because with season 3 in particular, Shirogane and Hayasaka has built like this really cool type of friendship, and that's carried forward to the scene. And as they are all having fun, Kaguya is just looking from the sidelines, which is again something that you've seen a lot in this whole series, that Kaguya is always just looking from the sidelines, even though she's getting hurt while she's doing that, maybe because of her own stupidity that she ends up being in the sidelines in the first place. But yeah, that's just how it is. Ishigami making the goofy faces, again, part of the story. And when Miyuki has his whole extended segment where he's doing his own dancing thing, where he's just singing about the whole thing, we cut to the Chika scene where she's wiping away her tears. So there's an untold story here. Shirogane probably sucks at dancing, as he does with most things, and Chika helped him out of it. Chika taught him how to dance. So this is Mama Chika mode again. I'm sure some people missed that Chika was wiping off her tears there. And I really like when a story is told this way. Similar to like the second opening, the Daddy Daddy Do opening of Kaguya-sama. That one actually tries to tell a story, and like the first opening and the third opening, they're all really good. But my favorite one is the second opening because it's like a small episode on its own. But that is just totally Kaguya-sama, right? This has the essence of Kaguya-sama while also still being something completely unique. And that's just really cool. I really like this. I don't want Vercreek to be known as the 18-year-old animator, right? He's an incredible animator, period. But it's like what Hoshiyumi says in Haikyuu. Are you looking at me just because I'm short? And no, that's not the idea. You're an incredible player, and being short is a disadvantage. So that's why you're all the more incredible. Similarly with Vercreek, he is an incredible animator, but the fact that he's 18 just elevates that to a next level. He's so talented at such a young age, and he has such a long road ahead of him. I can't wait to see where he goes from here. I'll make more videos focused on really young animators who are incredible. Like there's also Yen Yen. There's also Tam Lu. Tam Lu has not worked in anime yet, but boy, I would put him at like top 5 best animators of all fucking time. That's not even an exaggeration. Tam Lu is that fucking good. I'll make a video on him. The next video will be on My Hero Academia's Season 6's trailer, because it really looked fantastic. I need to make a video on it. But that's about it for this ending. And if you like this video, leave a like. If you disliked it, leave a dislike and tell me down in the comment section why you dislike. And you can tell me whatever you want in the comment section. I read most of the comments and I appreciate all of your comments, whether it's criticism or just saying hey. And if you want to see more of this stuff, subscribe. That's about it. Thanks for the views.